KTRS.
750 here, Big 550 KTRS. Last week or so, maybe 2 weeks ago, Mayor Slay was talking about a north-south MetroLink expansion. And that story blew up this week when Steve Stenger, county executive, refused to sign a letter supporting the bi-state development, and the everybody else sort of chimed in on this letter. Steve Stenger upset and made his points well known publicly. He joins us now, County Executive Steve Stenger. Thanks for joining us here on the Big 550 KTRS.
Hi, McGraw. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
You got it. So explain yourself. What is making you so upset over this whole situation?
Well, it's really not a matter of being so upset. There's not really a high level of emotion on this side of the phone. I stood in opposition to the request to make the north side, south side alignment the St. Louis region's transit priority simply until a thorough analysis of all the other routes that are out there could be completed. So really my dispute or my concerns are really with the process. And if I can explain, there is a regional council of governments that meets once a month. It's called East-West Gateway. East-West Gateway is where a priority like the one in question, like this route, would be set. And that process was not followed. What happened is I received a copy of a letter to sign 3 hours before it was due, and the letter essentially declared this route the priority for the region, and funding was sought for a study. Well, the funding for the study that was being sought is really not an issue, but declaring it as the priority route for the region, meaning that we're going to rally all of our transportation resources around this route that costs $2.2 billion without really any debate in the current Council of Governments. It's just not the process that's followed for a project of this magnitude and this importance.
So you didn't sign the letter, but you also wrote another letter in opposition. And as the mayor's office has said, it's one thing not to sign a letter. It's another thing to write a different letter in opposition. Explain. Go ahead.
And the mayor is absolutely right. It is one thing to not write a letter, and it is another, to go forward with some proactive steps. And I did take proactive steps, and I meant what I said in the letter that I wrote. And I said exactly what I just said with, on this show, which is that I'm not in opposition to the north side, south side alignment. But what I do stand in opposition to is the request to make this alignment the region's transit priority, as I said, until other routes are studied, which, for instance, we're going to be announcing other routes being studied this week in St. Louis County. And when I do that, I will not be claiming that any of those routes should be our transit priority just yet. It needs to go through East-West Gateway of Governments, where all of our regional elected officials from all of our counties on the east side of the river and the west side of the river, we all meet once a month, and we make determinations with regard to transit. And that's where that determination needs to be made. They will be made the same way for the routes that the county is going to be proposing, the same way for the route that the city is proposing. And the mayor, when he wrote his letter, knew that our studies were in the works, because I announced that sometime last year.
You're saying that you didn't know until 3 hours before this letter was to be published. Are you saying that you had never had any conversations or ever knew that a north-south MetroLink was planned?
Well, knowing that there was a north side, south side route that was in existence is completely separate and apart from knowing that someone was going to propose that be our regional priority, meaning that we're going to rally all of our federal dollars, all of our local dollars, all of our local resources behind a route. That is not how that decision is made. So yes, that was a shocker that was to be named and designated by one person as the region's transportation priority. That is not how it's done in our region or anywhere.
It sounds like, Steve Stenger, even if they gave you 2 weeks to ponder the letter, you wouldn't have signed it Because
not at this point. Yeah, because of the process.
Right. So you want the process going forward, but regionally speaking, don't you think the north-south MetroLink expansion is probably the best when it comes to what's best for the region?
No, not necessarily, because a full analysis of that route has not been done since 2008, and a comparison with the other routes that are in existence has not been done. So, no, I can't say that at this point, and frankly, the mayor can't say that at this point. No one can.
Well, actually, the mayor did say that.
Well, he did, but saying it within the appropriate process and through the appropriate process and making that declaration as a result of the appropriate process did not happen.
So how come the mayor can say it, the Bi-State Development Agency can say it, the East-West Gateway Council can say it, and the head of the Regional Chamber of Commerce all signed that letter saying that was the best, and you're alone saying, wait a minute, hold on a second, we need to go through the process?
Well, I'm not actually saying, I may be the only person saying it, but there is a Regional Council of Governments at East-West Gateway that has not voted on this. So this is not just me speaking alone, which I will tell you, I would be happy to speak alone if it were just me speaking alone. But and remember this, I don't speak alone. I speak on behalf of the million people who elected me to office, and their $137 million that they spend on public transportation every year. And I'm going to stand up for my voters and my residents.
Since this has happened, have you had a chance to talk privately, one-on-one with Mayor Slay?
No, I mean, and with respect to North Side, South Side, he and I have had maybe a 5-minute conversation prior to that letter being sent to me that we were asked to sign 3 hours before the submission. And when he talked to me for those 5 minutes, it was never mentioned to me that this was going to be declared the route of priority for the region.
Characterize your relationship with Mayor Slay. It sounds like it's somewhat strained.
I don't think that our relationship is strained, but I think that if we're going to, as you said, think regionally and we're going to act as a region, we really have to follow through with action on those words. And I think we have to follow the due process that we have, which is, one of the things you mentioned, you said that East-West Gateway signed off on that letter. Well, East-West Gateway did not sign off on the letter. The executive director signed off on a letter that he believed was for the funding, but the director does not act for the board unless the director is authorized by the board to act. So, technically speaking, the board did not authorize the executive director to sign the letter. So the impact of his signature is without board authority because there's no vote. The board has to vote in order to make this a regional transportation priority, and that action was not taken.
County Executive Steve Stenger, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you for your time, sir.
All right, thank you very much, McGraw.
You got it. 758 KTRS.